Hi everyone, welcome to Election Day the game. Now this is a 2 to 4 player game, remember that.
So let's get right into it. In order to begin the game, each player will have to roll a d20 that comes with the rest of your provided materials and attain a certain number. The number that each player receives will determine the order in which they choose their player card. The order will start from the player with the greatest number to the one with the lowest number. If there happens to be a tie between two or more players, then those players will have to re-roll.
First, we have our player cards.
Under the section titled Starting Values, you will see 4 different items with certain numbers associated to them. These 4 different items are your resources, which you will be collecting throughout the game. The 4 resources that you possess in the game are called campaigners, donors, endorsements, and influence points. The numbers next to the resources determines the amount of that specific resource you will have at the beginning of the game. Right underneath the Starting Values section, you will find the Election Day section. This section allows players to multiply the final amount of each of their resources by the number that can be found next to each resource, respectively. For example, if you are a Democratic elitist and you end up having 5 donors by the end of the game, then you will need to multiply your 5 donors by 3 to get 15 total donors. And you will have to do the same thing for each of your resources individually. Once you have the cumulative total of each resource, you will then add up all the numbers together to get your election day total. Once each player has chosen their player card, you will then get to write down the number of each resource you have on a piece of scratch paper. You will then be able to keep track of the number of resources you have throughout the game. Now that the game is set up and the players are ready, we have to decide who will actually begin the game. This decision will be made by another roll of the d20, where the highest scoring player will go first and the order will continue in a clockwise pattern throughout the game. If there happens to be a tie between any of the players, then all players will have to re-roll once. The winner of the die roll will then pick up an event card from the top of the deck of event cards. The event card is divided up into 2 categories, the first being the event and the second being the options given to you. The player will proceed to read everything on the card aloud, and then will choose one of the 3 options provided. Each option allows you to gain or lose a certain number of resources, which you will then be able to add or subtract to your current number of resources respectively. This process will continue until each player has gone once. By the time the last player reaches the end of their turn, they will also have to pick up a Town Hall card from the top of the deck of Town Hall cards. Town Hall cards are composed of 2 categories. The first being the name of the town hall and the action each player will perform, while the second contains the 4 options each player will have to choose from. The options will either allow you to trade resources with another player or steal them. In the case of trading resources, both players will calculate the number of resources they have left respectively. In the case of stealing resources, one player will only be adding to a certain resource while the player they stole from would subtract from that same resource. The player with the Town Hall card will proceed to read it out loud and place it in the middle of the playing surface. Each player will then roll a d20 once more to determine the order in which they will get to choose one of the 4 options provided. If there is a tie between any of the players, each player will re-roll the die once. Town Hall cards will be chosen by the end of every round by the last player to pick their event card. There is a total of 7 rounds, which means each round will consist of 1 event card per player and 1 Town Hall card per round. By the end of the 7 rounds, each player will multiply their individual resources by the number that is written on their player card under the Election Day section, respectively. Once calculated, the player with the most amount of points by the end of the game will be nominated as the President of the United States. Congratulations.